water represents the transportation of my enslaved ancestors, my African ancestors, to this area. And the white rice is what we brought with us and what we cultivated in this area to make this area what it is.
North Carolina up to the Wilmington, Jacksonville area is pretty much the beginning of it. And it goes all the way down to St. Augustine or Jacksonville, Florida. But the Gullah culture and language has been found as far south as Key West. Gullah people are very simple in their lifestyle. It's a very living off of the land and sea that is how they grew up. That is the culture, those are the traditions. A lot of Black or African American people in America, they don't know that they have this as a culture that has been there all along. I mean, we all know about slavery, we all know about, the history of the United States and all of those things, but knowing specifically about Gullah Geechee culture and Gullah Geechee history and being able to have a tangible place that you can go to, like the corridor, and connect to, that's huge.
And the thing that's distinguishing about them is that they are avid or very good rice planters. You know how some folks specialize, you got some neighborhoods that's just real good with brick masonry, or some neighborhoods just got real good mechanics, or some people are just attorneys. These Gullahs and Geechees were experts at rice planting.
Red rice, okra, sweet potato poon, those are the kind of things that I grew up eating in New York, but didn't realize that I was actually growing up Gullah. I knew that my grandmother's family was from Charleston, and I knew of Joshua John Ward, who was a big enslaver, but I didn't know where he was. I didn't know where the plantation was, anything like that. So that day, as we finished, we were in the museum, and I literally turned the corner, and there's Joshua John Ward's picture, and almost like a little shrine or something to him. And that's when it hit me that this is where my ancestors were, in Georgetown. When I was driving up there to Georgetown for that interview, I felt like I was going home. I felt like I was going to, my grandmother's house for Christmas or something like that.
The thing that was a lack of in the communities, and most African American communities, especially in the rural South, was that there was not much information out and published about our backgrounds. Not only Navassa, but any of the other small Black communities. I went to college at North Carolina A&T up in Greensboro. He introduced me to my roommate. He told me he was from King Street, South Carolina. The first day I'm there, I come back about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and about 5 or 6 his homeboys was in the room with him. And they were having an argument about something. I don't know what they were arguing about. But I do know I could not understand a word they were saying. And that was like my introduction to the Gullah Geechee folks. And they told me that, hey, I'm Geechee.
In 1660, King Charles is going to form the Royal Africa Company, but there are going to be 7 Lord Proprietors who found that Royal Africa Company. 5 of them are the founding fathers of the Carolinas. So they have a direct link to the importation of West African slaves on behalf of King Charles. So that first royal governor, James Moore's sons, the Goose Creek men, they are sent up the Cape Fear River to basically extinguish the remaining indigenous populations here. Once these Moore's brothers, these Goose Creek men, conquer them, they're going to try to grow rice off of the mouth of the Cape Fear River, so that you have Brunswick County is where those rice plantations coming out of Charleston are going to be established.
Well, it's where everything begins on the Cape Fear. It's the first permanent town, first major port for North Carolina. established in 1726. It's still considered a third-rate market in terms of the slave trade. The West Indies is going to be the #1 market, then Charleston, then the Cape Fear. But it is with the rice culture that will develop in the lower Cape Fear, not just for the rice cultivation, but also for the naval stores. Specifically, we're here at Brunswick Town, at the Brunswick Town Waterfront, and we're actually between two of the early wharves. To our south, just next to us, is William Dry's Wharf, circa 1740. Just above us is Roger Moore's Wharf, circa 1730. William Dry's Wharf would have been in existence from about 1740 to about 1765. So a goodly number of enslaved persons would have been debarked right here.
A lot of times we still refer to our people who are coming from Africa as slaves coming from there when it's a process of enslavement. And so people, and I also like to connect the broken empires from which they come. Because a lot of these people are highly skilled, intelligent. Many of them were even educated. One of the most famous instances I like to talk about is in the archives. We have a daguerreotype of a man named Prince Ibn Said. He was formerly enslaved to a governor of North Carolina out of Fayetteville, North Carolina, named Warren Winslow. And he was so brilliant in mathematics that his job as a slave or an enslaved person was to teach algebra to the white people only in the Fayetteville and Cumberland County area, or whomever could get there to get this knowledge. So I would like to say figuratively, he likely was plucked from the University of Timbuktu. Has anybody ever heard of that? Timbuktu. It was the most prominent university in the history in the world in 1500. Scholars came from all over the world to go there. The heart of the horrors of slavery is that some of those people were literally plucked and floated down the Niger River and sent over here. But I like to say, as a farmer, matter is not created or destroyed, it's displaced. So the brilliance of those people is not destroyed, it's displaced over here. It comes per stirpes through the generations. So Mali Songhay in Ghana. Songhay is where Timbuktu was located. And those empires that no longer exist. In fact, the Kingdom of Ghana is just a little slither of a part that was carved as a colony from Great Britain in the 1700s.
Now, Poplar Grove is the second plantation site of James Moore, who purchases this plantation site next in 1767 is Cornelius Harnett. Cornelius Harnett is probably the second largest slaveholder in the area, along with John Burgwin of the Burgwin Wright House.
In 1776, when the British, starting in March of 76, when the numbers of British military forces start growing in the Cape Fear, the number of slaves from the surrounding plantations start dwindling because they're escaping. They have a choice. If they're voting with their feet. They're running, and they're making their way to British forces. Most of them are heading to make it to British ships.
So there was this promise as the Constitution is being drafted throughout the 1780s. What does a state government look like? What does a county government look like? How are we a free society if we own slaves? And here you have some of the wealthiest men, and I do like to tell my school field trip students, for them to really understand the size of the wealth that we are talking about here, is that tobacco, rice, and cotton is Amazon, Google, Facebook. We're not talking about the wealth that'll build a house this size. We are talking about wealth, sugar being exported out of Barbados and Jamaica to the French Empire and to the English Empire. This is when Buckingham Palace is built. These monarchs are building their palaces from the wealth that is coming out of the Gullah Geechee corridor and South America off these sugar plantations. This plantation site actually had a block system. So they referred to their cabins or the quarters as the lots. They were the lots. And the lots as a word is coming from not just the auction block when people and families are sold in lots, right? But we do know that there was a practice of you are assigned a particular cabin, and when you have successive generations of enslaved community members, they are also then staying within a family in their designated cabin, so that the spaces also then are transferred to that next generation. Now, the rice plantations have large enslaved holdings where you have 200 persons working those rice plantations, the women and the children included. They have to be fed a protein. The peanuts is a slave food because it is being produced to support the diets of those rice plantation enslaved populations. Many of these white families, of course, are being fed by Gullah women and Gullah recipes. The problem is that the white mistresses of those homes are given all the credit for those recipes, right? And so there are publications of the Carolina Housewife that is a publication of the recipes of what is assumed to be these white women. But if we look at it again, these are all the recipes of their Gullah enslaved women. Being of the South and from the South and Southern culture is beyond the food. The French, the Spanish, the English, the Dutch, those native West African tribal tongues that are being spoken are all being blended together when you have a group of people who have been sold into slavery and then shipped across continents, across seas. So that this English, this broken English that they're speaking, these are actually people who have multiple languages that understand phonetically, right, just by ear, multiple languages to create their own. And to what great, and I really think of this in terms of the power of language, because a language is your most direct form of communication outside of the written language, is the spoken language. So if you have these enslavers and you have these racist, pervasive ideas that your enslaved cannot even master English.
Well, a lot of the Gullah became landowners along the Sea Islands because even during enslavement, the Sea Islands was considered garbage land. No one wanted to live there. It was hot, it was humid, it was buggy. And during those colonial times, yellow fever and malaria were really running rampant. So when the Union Army came into the South and the enslavers started to leave, a lot of the land was essentially left because nobody really wanted it. They knew that from land comes wealth because they saw it, they grew it, they worked it. So they wanted to make sure that they had that tangible gift, let's call it, that they could pass on to future generations. The Gullah Geechee culture is one of the only indigenous cultures in the United States that still has their land. And if the land is lost, then the culture is then lost, just like the Hawaiians and the Native Americans. The Gullah started to lose their property for a variety of reasons. First of all, of course, we had Jim Crow laws. There were the black codes. There was hate crimes and maliciousness and you name it. So for a lot of reasons, people were afraid to go through the system or intimidated by filing the right paperwork and all of those different kinds of elements. So that's one of the reasons why land was lost. As far as getting a will and creating the documentation trail that we use today, that wasn't done because of the intimidation. Let's say that ancestor by now had maybe originally 10 children. Those 10 children might have had 10 children, and so on and so on. So that original purchaser could have hundreds of heirs by now. They could have thousands of heirs by now that are all entitled to a percentage of the land that was originally purchased. And so because of that, that is what heirs property is. It only takes one person out of that 100 people to say, I want to sell. And even if it's taken to court, the knee-jerk reaction of the court is to sell the property and displace everybody that is on the land. Largest amount of Black or African American people in the United States have lost their land due to heirs property issues. The number is close to 90%. Unfortunately, the majority of Gullah land is in high tourist areas because it's along the coast, because it's on an island. And so with that, taxes are continuously rising. I'll give you the example of someone that I've been able to help through my foundation. She's 96 years old. She just lost her husband within a year. Her taxes and the property was in the husband's name. So in 1 year, her property taxes went from $440 to $2,200. As a 96-year-old, she can't afford that. And that's part of the problem. When you have a sudden change, a financial change like that, people can't afford to hold on to the land.
It's not just a big city problem. It's not just a North Carolina problem. It's a problem that's everywhere, right? And it probably is still a problem until we can figure out how we can get folks that of different economic backgrounds, we can get them to figure out how to live together. Right? We live in a community which is changing fast. 5 developments under construction. We only got about 2,500 people. We got 5 developments under construction, and between those 5 developments, there will be at least 3,000 units. And you know how many people it is per unit? About 3.5 people per unit, so you can do the math. So we are living under some changing times. We know that the neighborhood is going to change. We caused some of that ourselves. We went out and advocated for I-140 bypass, which opened up the land that's in the Vassar to a lot of folks that didn't even realize it was there, right? But now they see all of the land and the benefits that come with it, being within the proximity of a larger city.
I hated International Day because being called Black didn't mean anything to me because it's a color, or being African American didn't mean anything to me because I didn't know Africa where, and I was smart enough to know it's a continent, not a country. So those things really kind of puzzled me as a child. Now that I know, and I call myself a Gullah Geechee American now, because that works, and that's who I am, and that fits for me.
When I got to be the mayor, I got described as being a Gullah Geechee mayor, because inside the town limits of Navassa is 8 of these rice plantations, right? Now, mind you, the book that I wrote has not one mention of the word Gullah Geechee or the Gullah Geechee culture.
Being a descendant of Gullah Geechee people in North Carolina, to me means that I am recognizing that I come from enslaved West Africans who were brought to this area against their will and cultivated the land here, more than just rice, sweet potatoes, but peanuts. We were farmers, we were fishermen, and that the beauty that you see even to this day in this area, my people are directly responsible for that.
So many people who don't know that they're Gullah, the more it's talked about and the more it's shared and the more it is brought into mainstream media, then the sooner we can kind of correct some of the issues that we have and find some resolutions, like Heirs property. The story of Josephine Wright on Hilton Head, that unfortunately she just passed away a couple of months ago, but her story went national. And because of her story going national, and her story wasn't the only one, I can give you 10 stories off the top of my head that are just like her story of a developer trying to push her off of her property because he didn't want her there. You know, no particular reason why, but other than greed, let's call it. Those are the kind of stories, because she went national, that people can use to elevate the story and bring the highlight to the culture and the needs of the culture, because the land loss is at a critical point right now, and it really needs to be protected, and it really needs to be preserved so that families not only have something generationally, but they can also have the stability and generational wealth that comes along with owning the land. The Gullah story needs to get out there. It really, really needs to get out there. That's why, through the work that I'm doing, I started the website, lowcountrygullah.com, which has become a resource for Gullah information on the culture, the traditions, the people, just information in general, as well as protecting the land.